They locked him in a tiny cell for 27 years. Imagine wind off the sea, grey walls, and a small bed of stone. How can a man carry that pain and leave without hatred? That question follows Nelson Mandela. His life is a study in choice, to forgive, to lead, and to rebuild. From a boy herding cattle beneath the stars to the people's symbol of hope, Mandela always asked, "What would you do when chains are the only answer?" We begin with a man stepping into sunlight, not as a victor but as a humble servant. No prison could silence his spirit. This is Nelson Mandela, whose long walk to freedom teaches courage and compassion. His journey would change a nation and inspire the world for generations to come. Mandela's story begins in a small Eastern Cape village called Mvezo in 1918, born into the Thembu royal family. His given name, Ralilala, meant pulling the branch, a nickname that hinted at curiosity. His father, Gadla Henry Mfakaniiswa, was a respected local chief, but after a clash with a colonial magistrate he was stripped of his chieftainship. The family moved to nearby Kunu. In Kunu, young Mandela herded cattle across red earth, slept under vast stars, and listened to elders' stories of honor and duty. Those tales sowed dignity and a quiet determination to resist humiliation. He was the first in his family to go to school. At a mission school, a teacher gave him the English name Nelson. Even then he showed leadership, a restless mind hungry for knowledge and a heart that would not accept being told he was less than others. These early years shaped his sense of justice, responsibility, and a lifelong commitment to his people's dignity. Truly, Madiba's education marked the moment curiosity met conviction. He attended Fort Hare University, one of the rare institutions open to black students, where ideas and politics stirred like fire. There he joined protests against unfair rules and was suspended, a small rebellion that showed he preferred action to silence. Mandela moved to Johannesburg determined to build a life and a cause. He worked odd jobs, a security guard, a clerk, and earned money while soaking up the city's contradictions. Prosperity for some, crushing poverty for many. He enrolled at the University of the Witwatersrand to study law, where daily encounters with inequality sharpened his moral outrage. The city opened Mandela's eyes. He saw how laws, workplaces, and neighborhoods were built to exclude black people. That awareness turned anger into purpose. Education gave him tools. The streets gave him a mission. He would fight not for himself alone, but for the dignity of millions denied a fair chance to live and thrive. By 1948, South Africa hardened into apartheid, a legal system designed to separate people by skin color and lock opportunity behind racial lines. Apartheid was more than prejudice, it was policy. Laws forced black South Africans into separate townships, required passbooks to travel, and denied voting rights and basic services. The system's design turned daily life into a gauntlet, long commutes to menial jobs, overcrowded schools, and medical facilities that were a shadow of those for white. Families were broken by forced relocations and pass raids. Men could be arrested for walking on a wrong sidewalk or shopping in the wrong store. Humiliation became an ordinary part of existence, and a nation's promise of equal humanity was stripped away piece by piece. For Mandela, apartheid was not an abstract injustice. He saw real people suffering, neighbors, classmates, colleagues. That sight transformed his anger into a decision. The structures that codified inequality must be challenged and dismantled. It demanded resistance, not acceptance. Mandela joined the African National Congress and soon helped found the ANC Youth League, energizing a new generation to demand rights and dignity. They organized boycotts, pickets, and public meetings, training ordinary people to speak up and refuse unjust rules. Mandela's speeches were plain but powerful. He spoke of equality, not vengeance, and he inspired others to believe change was possible. The movements were disciplined and creative. Economic boycotts, strikes, and mass rallies aimed to squeeze unjust power structures. Yet peaceful protest faced violent backlash. Authorities arrested leaders, banned organizations, and used force against demonstrators. The state's response grew harsher, aiming to crush resistance with intimidation and law. Still, each crackdown revealed the system's weakness. People would not be silenced forever. For Mandela and the young activists, the choice hardened: how to press on when nonviolent tactics met with deadly opposition. That question would reshape their strategy and Mandela's path forward. They learned strategy, discipline, and the bitter cost of standing for justice. The turning point came in 1960 at Sharpeville, where thousands gathered to protest past laws. The crowd was peaceful. They meant to be seen, to refuse a humiliating system. Police opened fire. 69 people died, many shot in the back while fleeing, a slaughter that shocked the nation and the world. In the massacre's aftermath, the government declared a state of emergency, banned the ANC, and arrested thousands. Mandela realized that peaceful protest alone would no longer stop a regime willing to kill its own citizens. He went underground because the struggle demanded new tactics and planning. Sharpeville burned away illusions. It taught a painful lesson. Sometimes movements must adapt when systems respond with violence. For Mandela, the choice was clear: escalate the resistance while trying to protect innocent lives. In 1961, Mandela co-founded Umkhonto we Sizwe, the Spear of the Nation, as the armed wing of the ANC. MK chose sabotage as its tool, targeting power stations, railways, and government offices to disrupt apartheid's machinery rather than harm civilians. The aim was clear: to strike systems that sustained injustice. This change was painful and controversial. Many in the movement grieved the shift from peaceful protest, but leaders argued that when a state answers peaceful dissent with bullets, new forms of resistance become necessary. MK trained in secrecy, planned operations, and tried to limit casualties while making apartheid costly to maintain. For Mandela, MK was a reluctant but deliberate step, a decision born from urgency, frustration, and a desire to protect people from a brutal, entrenched regime. Indeed, in 1962, Mandela was arrested for leaving the country without permission and for organizing resistance. He received a 5-year sentence, but his fate would worsen when police discovered hidden documents at a farmhouse in Rivonia outlining plans for sabotage. These papers implicated Mandela and other leaders in more serious plots. The subsequent trial was dramatic and dangerous. Prosecutors demanded the death penalty. Mandela stepped forward in court and delivered one of the most moving defenses. He did not hide his convictions. "I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society. It is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." Instead of execution, the court imposed life imprisonment. Mandela left the courtroom a symbol. His words and dignity turned the trial into testimony for millions who still believed in freedom. His courage inspired hope everywhere. Mandela was sent to Robben Island, a windswept prison off Cape Town, where the ocean's cold made each day feel longer. His cell was small: a thin mat, a bucket, no private toilet, and a bare light that never fully warmed the room. Prisoners broke rocks in the quarry under the sun and returned to cramped, damp cells that smelled of stone. Communication with the outside world was rare: 1 letter every 6 months and 2 short visits a year, and when his mother and later his son died, he was denied permission to attend their funerals. Yet even inside those walls, Mandela was not defeated. He studied languages, learning Afrikaans to understand his captors and to teach other prisoners. He turned the hardships into lessons and mentoring. He read law, debated ideas, and organized clandestine classes. Other inmates began to see him as a leader, not because he sought power, but because he offered dignity and direction in a place meant to strip both away. He kept learning. Over 18 years on Robben Island, Mandela's name grew beyond prison gates. He became a symbol of resilience, a quiet moral center for a movement that refused to die even when its leaders were caged. In the 1980s, Mandela's name became a rallying cry worldwide. International protests, economic sanctions, and cultural boycotts isolated the apartheid regime. Musicians, athletes, and universities raised their voices. "Free Nelson Mandela" resonated in stadiums and parliaments alike. Inside prison, authorities offered conditional release, freedom only if Mandela renounced armed struggle. He refused. "I cannot be free while my people remain chained," he said through intermediaries, holding firm to principle over personal comfort. That refusal transformed him from political prisoner into moral benchmark. Governments, activists, and ordinary citizens used his plight to spotlight the injustice of apartheid. Mandela's dignity under duress made the world see what South Africa's laws tried to hide: a brutal system needing fundamental change. Global pressure, sanctions, boycotts, and diplomatic isolation forced new conversations among world leaders. On February 11, 1990, after 27 years behind bars, Mandela walked out of prison into an uncertain world. He was 71 years old and flanked by supporters who had campaigned tirelessly for his release. Crowds cheered, Cameras watched as he stepped into sunlight for the first time in decades. Mandela's first words were not of triumph but of service. "I stand here before you as a humble servant of the people." He refused calls for revenge and urged reconciliation, asking his people to choose peace and unity over retaliation. His calm presence and insistence on dialogue changed expectations. Instead of revenge, he proposed building a nation together. The message stunned enemies and comforted allies. Forgiveness would be the foundation for a fragile, hopeful future. His release reignited negotiations and global optimism everywhere. Mandela entered tough negotiations with President F.W. de Klerk and other leaders to dismantle apartheid without plunging the country into civil war. The talks were long, tense, and sometimes nearly derailed by violence and extremist factions on both sides. Bombings, protests, and bitter mistrust shadowed the process. Mandela insisted on inclusive discussion and constitutional safeguards to protect everyone's rights. He chose to engage foes in conversation rather than crush them, believing that a fair political settlement required participation across the spectrum. Slowly, the walls began to come down. Between 1990 and 1993, key apartheid laws were repealed, political prisoners were freed, and political organizations were unbanned. These hard-won changes set the stage for democratic elections and the birth of a new political order in South Africa. Progress came slowly and cost much. In 1994, South Africa held its first democratic elections, a moment few had ever imagined. For the first time, every citizen could vote regardless of race. Lines formed for hours as people of all backgrounds queued to cast their ballots, and many cried when they marked their choices. The election transformed hope into reality. On May 10, 1994, Nelson Mandela was inaugurated as South Africa's first black president. His speech emphasized unity and reconciliation, not dominance. He invited former foes to join in building a shared future, and he set out priorities that included equality, education, and economic inclusion. Mandela's leadership style was remarkable, patient, strategic, and grounded in moral clarity. He used his moral authority to push for policies that balanced justice with economic stability. He appointed a diverse cabinet, supported truth and reconciliation efforts, prioritizing healing wounds of the past. Mandela governed with a vision of a single nation where dignity and opportunity were available to all citizens, not a few. One of Mandela's most cinematic moments came during the 1995 Rugby World Cup. Rugby had been a symbol of white South African identity, yet Mandela saw an opportunity to unite a divided nation. He wore the Springbok jersey and gave the trophy to team captain Francois Pienaar, turning a sports moment into a symbol of reconciliation. For many, seeing Mandela in that green jersey signaled a new willingness to bind the country together and move beyond old grievances. The gesture showed how symbolic leadership could speed healing and inspire ordinary citizens to seek reconciliation together across cities and towns. Mandela believed in limits to power. After one term, he stepped down, a rare gesture in leaders who hold sway, showing that leadership is service, not lifetime rule. After his presidency, Mandela continued public work, advocating for education, human rights, and reconciliation across continents. His efforts earned global recognition. In 1993, he shared the Nobel Peace Prize with F.W. de Klerk for their roles in ending apartheid through negotiation. He received dozens of international honors, honorary degrees, and awards celebrating his moral leadership and dedication to justice. In 2009, the United Nations declared July 18 Nelson Mandela International Day, a day encouraging people to devote time to community service and helping others, a fitting legacy for a man who always emphasized action over rhetoric. His influence remains globally felt. In retirement, Mandela remained a moral voice, urging education, health, and dignity while handing daily leadership to others. He focused on foundations and quietly encouraged young activists to lead. As age weakened him, he withdrew from public life, though his words still traveled the globe. On December 5, 2013, at 95, Nelson Mandela died peacefully. The world mourned deeply. Leaders and ordinary people honored his life of sacrifice and moral courage. His funeral was a farewell and a charge. Keep fighting injustice with empathy, choose reconciliation, and continue the long walk to freedom through real action in every generation. Mandela's legacy is a map of lessons: forgiveness over revenge, hope over despair, and resilience that turns suffering into steady resolve. He taught that courage is not the absence of fear but acting despite it, and that leadership is judged by the ability to lift others rather than to dominate them. His famous lines, "I have fought against white domination. I am prepared to die for this ideal," and "It always seems impossible until it is done," distill a worldview grounded in dignity and persistence. Mandela showed that moral clarity and pragmatic compromise can coexist, producing durable change. Today his life matters because it proves optimism is not naive, it is strategic. Mandela's example urges tactics that protect lives, build coalitions, and create lasting institutions for equality for everyone. Mandela's life shows the power of forgiveness, moral courage, and steady resolve. From a small village to the presidency, he chose reconciliation over revenge and left a blueprint for peaceful change. If one story can teach us to act with dignity, this is it. If Mandela moved you, share this story, serve your community, and carry his work forward in small, brave steps today and always.